I've said it before, I'll say it again. This second lockdown says to me that the cure is now worse than the disease, and the frustration that is being felt out there by people, and there is no political voice articulating that. Well, I think that may change very soon.
Greetings, pilots and passengers. Nigel Farage has announced that he will be stepping back into the political spotlight with his relaunching and rebranding of the Brexit Party into Reform UK, which will be an anti-lockdown party. Now, he announced this in a Telegraph article, which, I mean, I would show it, but you know what, the Telegraph, like, you have to subscribe for a blooming subscription to even read the Telegraph, which is a waste of time, and I'm not going to do that. So I do have an article from The Guardian that I'm going to go over. So the article is titled Reform UK, Brexit Party to rebrand as anti-lockdown voice. The party chairman Richard Tice says the country must learn to live with COVID, not hide in fear. Yeah, I think that people should be going about living their daily lives, and I mean, just take a look at Sweden. They're living life as if COVID doesn't exist, and they're completely fine. So the article goes on to say the Brexit Party has applied to the Electoral Commission to change its name to Reform UK in a bid to rebrand the party, which has no elected representatives, as a voice in the anti-lockdown movement. The party's leader, Nigel Farage, and chairman Richard Tice first announced the plan in a joint article in The Telegraph, where they wrote it was time to redirect our energies. The name change is subject to approval of the Commission. So, commenting on that, it is completely time to redirect our energies. I think it's more than that. All of this whole thing has been completely against the people from the very beginning. And it's very clear to see with the amount of suicides we've had. Just recently, university students, there's been like a suicide for every week of the term. The impact it's had on mental health, and also the impact it's having on small businesses. It's destroying businesses every time we go into lockdown, and not just that, the restrictions that are put in place. So the article goes on to say the Brexit Party gained 2% of the vote in the 2019 general election, and none of the 275 candidates it stood won a seat. Prior to the December election, Farage had announced the party would change its name following the UK's exit from the European Union and focus on campaigning for changes in the electoral system. So I personally think the Brexit Party were fundamental in fighting, obviously, for Brexit. Without them, we wouldn't have been able to leave the EU. I'm hopeful about what Farage is fighting for here with the anti-lockdown, and it will be interesting to see how that plays out, because obviously on Wednesday there's the vote which will decide whether we go into lockdown or not. In a statement on Sunday announcing the plans to rebrand the party, Farage said, "As promised, we continue to keep a very close eye on the government's trade negotiations with the EU to ensure a proper Brexit. Further reform in many other areas is also vital for our nation's future." Tice added, "The need for major reform in the UK is clearer now than ever. A new approach is essential so that the government works for the people, not for itself." Completely agree with that. One rule for us and one rule for them. He said that a new strategy was needed for tackling the coronavirus so that we learn to live with it, not hide in fear of it. The idea of ending the COVID pandemic through herd immunity was recently denounced as a dangerous fallacy unsupported by scientific evidence by 80 researchers who wrote a warning letter in a leading medical journal. So you mean it was scientists who are very pro-lockdown, mainstream scientists, not the scientists who have been completely deplatformed and censored for speaking against the lockdowns and against the restrictions and providing support towards herd immunity. Brexit Party announcement comes as England prepares to enter a 4-week nationwide lockdown on 5th of November, a decision which has angered some Tory MPs. Of course it will, with prominent backbenchers including Sir Graham Brady warning they are likely to vote against new restrictions. Good, because we don't need to be in this lockdown anymore. We don't need to go into another lockdown. It's all form of control. against us, it is just control. MPs will vote on the second lockdown on Wednesday, as experts warn that the daily death toll could reach as high as 4,000 by Christmas if swift action is not taken. And compared to the death toll of people dying from other illnesses, other diseases, and being unable to get treatment because of the COVID wards, which are empty.
Are we allowed to see her?
Not necessarily, because it's COVID, you see. So let me get my ward sister to come on and have a chat with you. So,
Right.
Thank
she
you.
says overall say.
All right, yeah.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Jack. So, this is the COVID ward. Okay. And there's nobody in these beds. And there's also nobody in this room here. So, it's not as busy as what we should be made to believe.
Announcing the decision on Saturday evening, Boris Johnson said that if nothing is done, the country faced a peak of mortality worse than that of the first wave in April. So more fear-mongering from Boris Johnson yet again, who at this point, many people call Bojo, but he really is just looking like a bozo. And I mean, that's a story for another day. That's a discussion for another day, as obviously many people have supported Boris Johnson because of his fighting for Brexit, but now the way he's handled this, some people are suggesting he is on the wrong side, if you get my drift. I did see a very interesting tweet which Nigel Farage actually retweeted himself from Peter Hitchens, which says, "Why are these deaths far greater than those from COVID and in many cases preventable, not read out nightly in solemn tones in the BBC?" This is figures for September 2020. The amount of deaths from illnesses and diseases compared to COVID-19. So COVID-19 is down at the bottom with 690, and then all the way at the top is dementia with 4,449. You've got heart diseases at 4,104, and then cancers, so lung cancer, 2,324. All of these illnesses and diseases which could get treated and managed, and in many cases be preventable, such as heart diseases, and obviously treatment for cancer. And then COVID's treated as though everyone is dying from it, that everyone is falling ill from it, and as a result this is having a detrimental effect on those who can't get treatment because they can't get into hospitals because of the COVID wards which have been set up and have been found to be empty, or all the nurses and doctors are out, doing TikToks.
That's why we've been waiting so long. We're all down here with a bunch of mops. They are mugging the system. Been in the hospital, what? I've seen it all now.
I do have another article here from the Daily Mail, which most of it is summarising the same as what the Guardian article said, that Nigel Farage is seeking to relaunch his political career by rebranding the Brexit Party as an anti-lockdown party, that they have applied to the Electoral Commission, and that the party has some new aims, including tackling the House of Lords, the BBC, making changes to electoral system, which he say is all badly run. But here, the Daily Mail have said that the party are hoping to capitalise on the anti-lockdown sentiment. Again, I mean, this article is showing a very clear bias. and they believe that the most pertinent issue right now is the government's woeful response to coronavirus. It's added that they claim that the government's tried to terrify the nation into submission, which I completely agree with, while waiting for a vaccine, which is no way to tackle the disease, which may be around for a long time. We don't need a vaccine. The party, led by Mr Farage, supports the Great Barrington Declaration, which was penned by 3 top scientists and is now backed by more than 44,000 medics and scientists. So this declaration, if you don't know, has been signed by epidemiologists, scientists, medics, people involved in medicine. It's calling for the end to lockdown restrictions and putting people in lockdown. It states that the Great Barrington Declaration, as infectious disease epidemiologists, public health scientists, we have grave concerns about the damaging physical and mental health impacts of the prevailing COVID-19 policies and recommend an approach we called focused protection. They believe that the lockdown policies right now are producing devastating effects, short-term and long-term. This includes lower childhood vaccination rates, which, I mean, that's a discussion in itself whether you support that or not. Fewer cancer screenings, worsening cardiovascular disease outcomes, so deaths from other illnesses compared to COVID, and also damage to mental health. So they believe that keeping these measures in place will just cause more harm than good. They believe in herd immunity. So they state, as immunity builds in the population, the risk of infection to all, including the vulnerable, falls, and that eventually the population will reach herd immunity, where the rate of new infections is stable. And then, they believe that this can be assisted by a vaccine, but there's been a lot of people who have been very outspoken stating that we don't need a vaccine. Nigel Farage completely supports that, which is obviously a very different take on how to deal with the coronavirus, which has been absolutely widely criticised by everyone, as noted in this article. And Matt Hancock is claiming it's not true that herd immunity can be achieved by enough people catching coronavirus. I would say go look at Sweden, where everyone's just, walking around treating life as normal, and there is no new normal. So Richard Tice spoke on Talk Radio about rebranding the party, and I'll include a clip of that here now.
What do you hope to achieve this time?
Well, obviously, we've got elections next May. We've got local elections, we've got regional elections in London, in Wales, in Scotland, and we've got all the police and crime commissioners. So there's lots to go for, and we plan to be standing in all of those elections. But that's a few months away. Very short term, we need to work to give confidence, frankly, to the people that there is another way to dealing with the urgent crisis at hand, which is, of course, how to deal with corona and how to respond to it. And in our view, there is another way, there is a better way. It's called the Great Barrington Way. And it was truly disgraceful that the incredible experts, epidemiologists, medics and scientists who launched that, the way that they were abused and attacked by the establishment centred around Imperial College, by MPs at Westminster, when actually the Great Barrington Way is the sensible way forward. It's effectively the sort of approach that has been very successfully adopted in Sweden, that now is not seeing a second wave or a surge in cases and deaths. So we believe that's the right way. And what you do is you focus protection on the most vulnerable, those who need shielding in a really concentrated way. You do that job and do it properly, but then actually with good hygiene, with common sense, the rest of us, we get on with our lives and we build up immunity through the population. And let's remember, of course, Julia, this was the original strategy of the government, to build up a level of immunity through the population, because you cannot eliminate this virus. You can't get rid of it. We have to learn to live with it. We have to learn not to hide in fear of it, but actually to stand up, to stand tall, to stand confident, and to face into it. And for the vast, vast majority, over 99.5% of people who catch the virus, of course, actually they survive it with either no symptoms or flu-like symptoms. It is only dangerous for a tiny, tiny minority of people. Those are the people who need focused protection, and the rest of us need to get on with our lives. And let's be very clear, Julia, if you have a sick economy, and that's what we face now, you have sick people. If you have a dead economy, Julia, sadly, you have dead people.
I think it's personally good to finally get some representation of another way of tackling this coronavirus, which I think this whole thing has been handled terribly. We didn't need to go into lockdown at all, whatsoever. It has had a terrible impact on not just the economy, but people's lives. You know, people are having to close their businesses, small businesses shutting. It's destroyed communities, and it's keeping people apart. The government clearly don't have our best interests at heart if they're wanting to lock us down. What they've said is they're going to lock us down from Thursday for a month. And that is just being announced, so it's probably going to be longer than a month, and it could go on beyond that, which is ridiculous. It's destroying livelihoods, it's having a terrible impact on mental health, and it's killing more people. The people who can't get treatment for other illnesses and diseases, the people who are committing suicide because they're lonely, or you just look at the people stuck at university. And I don't think some people understand what that is like to be locked in a tiny little room, because at university it's not like you've got a whole huge bedroom to yourself. You've got a box room, and then you've got a shared kitchen, and they're not big. I know what it's like because I was at uni, and it's a tiny little room. So just picture yourself having to do all your lectures from that room and never get to leave it, and how that feels. So that is the state of what we're going into again. And Nigel Farage is completely right. There is other ways to handle all this, and that starts with herd immunity and just getting on with our daily lives and just stop causing so much fear, because people now just treat coronavirus and anybody who walks by with it's fear and disgust, like, don't get close to me, and freaking out. It's such a shame, because this is going to have an impact on our country for generations to come. So what we do now, it really does feel like make or break. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on Nigel Farage rebranding the Brexit Party to the Reform Party. I'm hopeful. I think finally it's a chance for there to be actual representation for millions in the UK who are feeling distressed and angry that we're heading into another lockdown. But we'll have to see how Nigel Farage handles this. I'd like to say, if you'd like to support the channel, please subscribe to Dare to Fly Today and get ready to take flight. Leave a comment down below on your thoughts of this video, and make sure you give this video a like and share it with others. You can also support my channel on Ko-fi with a one-off donation by buying me a coffee or some rocket fuel, or you can also send me a PayPal donation. All these details will be down in the description box below. Thank you so much to everyone who supports my channel. It really means so much to me, and I love you all so much. Have a wonderful day, guys. Love you lots. And as always, fly high, fear less.